Union News, the 14th of May, 2024. Welcome to Union News. This week, government benefit overhaul sparks criticism from campaigners, WASPI women await compensation, Prime Minister faces tough questions, teachers morally blackmailed into excessive workloads, Union warns, High Court Greenlights challenge to government's anti-strike laws, firefighters urged to refrain from assisting police in removing pro-Palestine protesters, BrewDog founder James Watt steps down as CEO amid controversy, and finally, BrewDog founder James Watt steps down as CEO amid controversy. Reporting is by Pat Harrington and music is from Tim Bragg.
Government benefit overhaul sparks criticism from campaigners. Campaigners are voicing sharp criticism against the government's recent benefit overhaul, arguing that it pushes single mothers and others on razor-thin margins deeper into financial instability. Under the new rules implemented today, universal credit claimants earning less than £892 will be required to search for additional or higher-paying work. Failure to meet these expectations could result in the loss of benefits altogether. The threshold has notably increased from £617 for individuals and £988 for couples. Now, individuals are expected to earn at least £1,437, a significant jump. This means that individuals working less than 18 hours a week on minimum wage will now have to actively seek more employment opportunities. Additionally, those working less than half of a full-time week will face more frequent meetings with their work coach to boost earnings or risk penalties. The Department for Work and Pensions estimates that around 180,000 people will be affected by these changes. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak defended the reforms, stating that welfare should always be a safety net and not a lifestyle choice. He believes the changes will help more people on universal credit transition into well-paid jobs and achieve financial independence. However, Michael Clark, head of information programs at anti-poverty charity Turn to Us, disagrees. Clark argues that the threshold rises severely challenge those juggling jobs with irregular or fluctuating incomes and balancing responsibilities like childcare. For single mothers and others on razor-thin margins, these adjustments risk tipping them into crisis, exacerbating financial insecurity and mental stress as they struggle to meet the new demands, Clark stated. He emphasized the importance of a support system that truly aids those in need rather than penalizing them. These reforms come in the wake of other welfare changes announced by Mr. Sunak last month, including a review into Personal Independent Payment, PIP, a non-means-tested benefit aiding individuals with extra costs due to long-term disability or ill health. Sunak pledged to reduce the number of those with mental health conditions claiming PIP and introduce a more rigorous approach, sparking criticism from campaigners who accuse him of launching a full-on assault on disabled people.
WASPI women await compensation, Prime Minister faces tough questions. During this week's Prime Minister's question session, SNP MP Chris Law directed a pointed query to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak regarding the much-anticipated compensation for WASPI, Women Against State Pension Inequality, Women. Law pressed, can the Prime Minister finally set out when the WASPI women will receive the compensation they rightly deserve? The discussion referenced a motion passed by the Scottish Government advocating for compensation in full for the 3.8 million affected women. Responding to the inquiry, Sunak acknowledged the gravity of the issue, stating, I understand the strong feelings across the chamber on this topic and the desire for urgency in addressing them. He emphasized the need to meticulously review the comprehensive findings of the Ombudsman's 5-year investigation before providing an update to the House. The awaited report from the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman, PHSO, released in March, recommended payments ranging from £1,000 to £2,950, urging Parliament to take decisive action on the matter. Echoing sentiments from various MPs, who have advocated for larger payouts, the Prime Minister highlighted the government's commitment to ensuring pensioners' dignity and security in retirement, citing recent increases to the state pension. Members of the PHSO, appearing before a parliamentary committee, suggested that some WASPI women might merit payments exceeding the recommended levels outlined in the report. Interim PHSO Ombudsman Rebecca Hilsenrath acknowledged the possibility of direct financial loss for certain individuals beyond those included in the sample cases studied. WASPI Chair Angel Madden reiterated the urgency of the matter, underscoring the financial hardships faced by many women as a result of delayed pensions. Madden emphasized the significant impact on those who had sacrificed full-time employment to care for loved ones, asserting the tangible financial consequences of such decisions. As pressure mounts and expectations heighten, the quest for equitable compensation for WASPI women remains at the forefront of political discourse, underscoring the need for swift and substantive action to address this long-standing injustice.
Teachers morally blackmailed into excessive workloads, union warns. Amid mounting concerns over the working conditions of teachers in Scotland, the Scottish Secondary Teachers Association, SSTA, has sounded the alarm, accusing educators of being morally blackmailed into accepting unsustainable levels of unpaid work. Addressing delegates at the SSDA's annual conference, Union President Stuart Hunter highlighted the pervasive culture of excessive workloads, attributing it to a sense of obligation driven by the belief that additional tasks are necessary for the sake of the kids. Hunter lamented the toll this phenomenon takes on teachers' mental health and called for an end to the cycle of emotional manipulation. In the backdrop of Glasgow's decision to slash 450 teaching positions over the next 3 years, Hunter criticized the lack of support for educators, noting the absence of vital roles such as social workers and educational psychologists. He denounced budget cuts as a political tactic, accusing authorities of prioritizing austerity measures over the well-being of teachers and students. Meanwhile, the National Association of Schoolmasters Union of Women Teachers, NASUT, hosting its own conference, highlighted the escalating crisis of violence and abuse faced by teachers in schools. NASUWT's Scotland official, Mike Corbett, emphasized the urgent need for measures to address the effects of this alarming trend, citing recent incidents of weapon attacks on school premises. Teachers' safety concerns have been met with calls for immediate action from the Scottish Government. While acknowledging the need for enhanced well-being support for school staff, officials stated that over £2 million has been allocated since October 2020 to address these issues. As teachers and unions continue to raise the alarm on unsustainable workloads and safety risks in schools, pressure mounts on authorities to prioritise the welfare of educators and students alike in Scotland's education system.
High Court Greenlights challenge to government's anti-strike laws. In a significant legal development, the High Court has granted permission for a judicial review of the government's controversial Strikes, Minimum Service Levels, Act 2023, a move hailed as a victory for workers' rights. Civil Service Union PCs will spearhead the challenge against the legislation, which grants employers in specific sectors unprecedented powers to enforce minimum service levels during strike actions, effectively compelling workers to undermine their own protests or risk dismissal. Both PCs and the Trades Union Congress, TUC, welcomed the court's decision, viewing it as a crucial step in combating what they perceive as an assault on trade union freedoms. PC's General Secretary Fran Heathcote condemned the government's attempt to curtail workers' right to strike, highlighting the effectiveness of previous strike actions undertaken by PC's members in securing concessions. Heathcote vowed to resist any erosion of workers' rights and expressed gratitude for the opportunity to challenge the legislation through legal avenues. TUC General Secretary Paul Novak echoed these sentiments, characterizing the Strikes Act as a regressive measure that undermines the fundamental right to strike. He criticized the government's persistence in pushing through these reforms despite warnings about their potential unlawfulness and detrimental impact on industrial relations. This legal setback for the government comes on the heels of private rail operators' refusal to enforce minimum service regulations on striking train drivers represented by the union ASLEF. The defiance of these regulations underscores the deep-seated resistance among workers to what they perceive as unjust constraints on their ability to collectively bargain and protest. As the legal challenge gains momentum, workers and unions remain steadfast in their commitment to safeguarding the right to strike and challenging legislative measures that impede their ability to advocate for fair wages and working conditions.
Firefighters urged to refrain from assisting police in removing pro-Palestine protesters. In a show of solidarity with the pro-Palestine movement, the Fire Brigades Union, FBU, has issued a directive to its 32,000 members, urging them not to aid police in evicting protesters engaging in rooftop occupations of British factories manufacturing weapons for Israel. The call to action comes in response to an incident in Leicester where firefighters from the Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service were summoned by police to address an occupation staged by supporters of the direct action group Palestine Action at the Israeli-owned Elbit Tactical Systems factory. During the operation, firefighters were observed using an aerial appliance to remove a protester from the occupied building, sparking controversy over their involvement in what some perceive as a law enforcement activity. In a message to firefighters following the incident, FBU General Secretary Matt Rack underscored the primary role of firefighters in saving lives and protecting communities, emphasizing that there is no justification for their involvement in the removal of protesters. Rack reiterated the union's stance in supporting the rights of protesters and advocating for peace and justice in Gaza. The FBU's directive advises members to refrain from participating in law enforcement activities alongside the police, particularly in situations involving the removal of protesters. This stance aligns with previous instances where firefighters have declined police requests for assistance during rooftop occupations of arms factories targeted by campaigners. John Nicholson of Greater Manchester Friends of Palestine recalled an occasion when firefighters, upon being informed of the FBU's policy on Palestine, opted not to assist police in removing protesters during an occupation at an Elbit UK factory in Oldham. As tensions escalate in the region, pro-Palestine protests are expected to continue across Britain this weekend, highlighting ongoing international concerns over Israel's military actions in Gaza and the plight of Palestinians seeking refuge amidst the conflict.
And finally, BrewDog founder James Watt steps down as CEO amid controversy. James Watt, co-founder of the Scottish brewery and pub group BrewDog, has announced his decision to transition to the newly created role of captain and co-founder, retaining his shares in the company. This move will see Chief Operating Officer James Arrow assume the position of CEO, marking a significant shift in leadership for the company. Established in Fraserburgh, Aberdeenshire, in 2007 by Watt and Martin Dickey, BrewDog has grown to encompass breweries and pubs worldwide, while maintaining its headquarters in Ellon, Aberdeenshire. Reflecting on his tenure as CEO, Watt expressed gratitude for the journey of the past 17 years, acknowledging the highs and lows experienced during his time at the helm. However, Watt's leadership has been marred by controversy in recent years, with BrewDog facing criticism over its marketing campaigns and workplace culture. Former employees publicly accused the company of fostering a culture of fear and toxic attitudes towards junior staff in an open letter in 2021. Furthermore, BrewDog drew ire earlier this year for its decision to abandon its commitment to the real living wage in favor of the minimum wage for new hires. The announcement of Watt's departure has been met with celebration by members of Unite, the union representing workers across BrewDog. Brian Simpson, lead organizer for the hospitality sector at Unite, criticized Watt for presiding over a culture of bullying and mistreatment within the company. Simpson emphasized the need for BrewDog to address the concerns raised by workers and urged the company to prioritize improving pay and conditions in collaboration with the union. As BrewDog undergoes this transition in leadership, it faces the challenge of rebuilding trust and addressing long-standing issues to foster a more positive and inclusive workplace environment for its employees.